and that you're just a useless servant. It wasn't the first time. It was the third, and this time I didn't defend myself, didn't cry, didn't even blink. I just reached for the notebook tucked under the spice rack and wrote it down, word for word, date, time, tone of voice. Because that was the moment I stopped being his wife and started being a witness. Where are you listening from? Drop your city in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more true stories. Before I became his useless servant, I was Delia Carrow logistics lead at a multinational firm in charge of 4 warehouses, 12 shift teams, and 1 overconfident husband. I was used to pressure. I liked deadlines. I thrived in chaos. Until my knee snapped during an ice storm, just trying to get our daughter to the car. I fell sideways, hit the concrete, and something inside me gave out with a sound I'll never forget. 3 surgeries, 6 months of recovery, then a polite call from corporate HR. Take all the time you need. Your role's been redistributed. We'll revisit your return after Q4. They never did. Graham said it was a blessing in disguise. Focus on home, be with Maisie. My mom needs you. I'll carry the rest. And for a while he did. Then came the slide. The joint account became his payroll. I got weekly transfers labeled household expenses, like I was a contractor. I had to ask for gas money. $12.89 once at Chevron. He asked why I didn't use coupons. I stopped eating lunch so Maisie could have strawberries. Even the fridge started to feel like enemy territory. Viola, his mother, needed constant care. She'd wander at night, open faucets, curse at shadows. Sometimes she called me her daughter, other times the cleaning lady. She once screamed when I tried to brush her hair, "Don't touch me, you don't belong here." Graham chuckled when I told him, "You're just too sensitive." But he wasn't laughing the day she wet herself, and I had to clean the floors with vinegar and boiling water because the smell wouldn't come out. He just stepped over the towel, didn't say a word. At night, I'd sit at the edge of the bed massaging my old knee and listening to Graham talk in his sleep. Once he muttered, "God, I do everything around here." Another time, should have married someone who earned her own keep. He never apologized for those dreams, and when he was awake, he got worse. He started referring to me in third person. "The house manager's upset today. She burned dinner again. Should we schedule her a break like employees get?" Maisie once asked if I worked for Daddy. I didn't know how to answer. When I asked for $40 for new shoes for her, he gave it to me like I was panhandling. Didn't even look up from his laptop. "You know, maybe it's time you figured out how to be useful again," he said. I didn't slam the door, didn't throw the shoes, didn't scream. I just opened a notebook I kept under the spice rack and wrote it down. Date, time, phrase, tone. Because I used to run shipping for 300 people, but now I was reduced to proving I was worth the price of onions. Still, I remembered everything. The shift in his tone, the day he changed the bank pin, the moment I stopped being a wife and started being a record keeper. That's the thing about women like me. You push us long enough, we don't explode, we archive. The first crack in his perfect world came from a forgotten printout left on the kitchen counter. It was folded once tucked into yesterday's mail pile. I was moving dishes when I noticed the seal light blue, faint watermark, I. Internal Oversight Unit. Graham had never brought home state papers before, not openly. Curious, I unfolded it. It wasn't addressed to me, but it didn't need to be. The words in bold were clear enough. Preliminary notice of internal review. Design error identified, Western Track project. My eyes skimmed phrases like load-bearing miscalculation, potential liability, lead engineer signature flagged. The name at the bottom, Graham E. Carrow. I didn't flinch, didn't reread, didn't even raise an eyebrow. I just folded the paper back, wiped the counter where it sat, and slid the document between 2 cookbooks he never touched. That night at dinner, he poured himself a bourbon, cut into his steak like the world was still his. He said the mashed potatoes were dry. Viola accused me of poisoning her. Maisie asked if I could make popcorn after. No one noticed the shift in me, but something had changed. The next day I volunteered at the downtown library. It was quiet there, clean. The director, Patrice, was kind. You know, she said, I still remember when you ran logistics in Denver. You were a beast in operations. I smiled, still am. She laughed, but I meant it. That afternoon, I walked past the Civic Careers Board in the break room. Open position, Transit Operations Coordinator, Regional Division. Confidential applications accepted. Experience in logistics preferred. Familiarity with civil engineering terminology. A+. I took a picture of the posting, didn't tell anyone, just saved it in a folder named Pop Groceries Q1. That night, Graham asked where his mail was. I told him I must have thrown out the junk. He shrugged. I boiled pasta, fed Maisie, rubbed Viola's ankles with ointment. Then I went upstairs, opened my laptop, and started building a resume under the name D.C. Halden. Just initials, no traces, not yet. He called me a servant, but he had no idea I was also his shadow and now his witness. It started with $60. Small bills. Viola kept them in a green zippered pouch, wedged behind her pill organizer, like a secret she still had control over. That afternoon, I found her pacing the hallway, one slipper on one missing, mumbling to herself in clipped syllables. You took it. I know you did. I paused. She pointed a trembling finger straight at my chest. Don't pretend. You think I don't see what you're doing, slipping into my things when I sleep, taking what's mine. I didn't speak. There was nothing to say. She lunged forward surprisingly quick and slapped the side of my arm. I want my money back, she shrieked. The pouch lay wide open on her nightstand. Crinkled wrappers, tissues, no cash. I checked the laundry bin. Nothing. Checked under her mattress. Still nothing. I stood silent as she slammed drawers, rattling the pills, her voice sharp and hoarse like tearing cloth. Graham came home mid-accusation. She turned to him like a child reporting a theft at summer camp. She took it. I saw her. Graham didn't look at me, didn't ask if it was true. He just sighed, ran a hand through his hair and said, Del, can you give us a minute? Us, not her and me. Us as in him and the woman who forgot her own son's birthday last week, but remembered just enough to frame me. I left the room, not because I had to, but because I refused to be judged in my own kitchen without so much as a question. Later that night, he came upstairs and dropped $60 on the nightstand. Didn't say sorry, didn't say thank you, just said, She gets confused, you know that. I folded the bills slowly, tucked them into a new envelope, and wrote on the outside, March 17th, false accusation, no defense given. I added it to the file I kept in my dresser drawer, a manila folder once used for Maisie's art projects. Now it held printouts, photocopies, screenshots, and notes. I used to archive my daughter's drawings. Now I archived my husband's silence. There's a difference between forgetting someone and choosing to erase them. Viola forgot who I was. But Graham, he just stopped seeing me. And that was worse. The first time I saw the listing, I didn't believe it was real. Operations Coordinator, Idaho Department of Transit. Remote oversight, flexible entry path. Confidential applications welcomed. I blinked at the bulletin board in the break room of the library, then took out my phone and snapped a photo. A week later, the job was still open. I opened my old resume, reformatted it, and deleted my married name. Delia Carrow became what D.C. Halden. I adjusted the dates left gaps, where Graham would have insisted I looked inactive, and highlighted my experience managing logistics for high-urgency distribution hubs with budget oversight and cross-team coordination. None of it was a lie, just stripped of anything domestic. Maisie was asleep when I hit submit. The window was open, crickets outside. Graham was downstairs watching some documentary about civil engineering fails. Ironic, I glanced over at my old ID badge from Denver, tucked behind a family photo where I no longer smiled. The application confirmation came through within the hour. Thank you, DC Halden. Your materials have been received. The next day, Graham came home late. He looked tired, tense. I asked lightly, long day. He dropped his keys on the counter and muttered, there's a restructuring coming, nothing's official yet. But it's political. They're bringing in outsiders. Outsiders. I nodded. That weekend, while folding laundry, I overheard him on the phone in the garage, thinking I couldn't hear through the door. I might have to reapply internally. Some review committee, they've added layers, it's all a mess. I smiled, folding one of Maisie's small shirts into a perfect square. Layers? Yes, I was one of them. 3 weeks later, a follow-up email arrived. Shortlisted, remote interview scheduled, panel review in 2 stages. Final approval by an internal triage board. I was scheduled to be one of the observers. Not yet a decision maker, but close. Graham never knew. He just kept handing me receipts, criticizing the softness of the towels, asking why dinner didn't have enough heat. I kept my voice steady, let him eat. And at night, I reviewed operations flowcharts, while he snored like nothing in the world was about to shift underneath him. He had no idea his file might one day cross my desk. And I'd recognize the name, not as a husband, but as a case study into how men forget the women who used to run empires. Our anniversary came on a Thursday. I didn't circle it on the calendar, didn't bake a cake, didn't even bother wearing mascara. I made oatmeal for Maisie, walked her to school, then came home and ironed the shirt I'd wear for the interview. The Zoom link came in at 9:42 a.m. The waiting room was already open. 3 initials blinked in the corner of the screen. I took a breath, tightened the bun at the nape of my neck, and clicked join. They asked about regional logistics, winter rail conditions, staff burnout mitigation. My voice didn't tremble once. 30 minutes later, I was out. No applause, no confetti, just the quiet confidence of a woman who knew her own spine again. That night, Graham walked in with takeout containers, Greek, from the place we used to go before Viola moved in. He didn't say why, didn't say happy anniversary, didn't even look me in the eye. He just said there was a discount. They gave me extra tzatziki. I set the table. Maisie lit a candle. She didn't know what day it was, but she saw the wear on my face. Are you okay, Mom? She whispered. I nodded. I just finished something important today. She smiled like a project. I smiled back. Exactly like that? Across the table, Graham scrolled through his phone, probably checking job forums. I caught a glimpse of an email on his screen. Internal committee, application review timeline. Updated. He didn't notice I saw. I didn't mention the anniversary, didn't hand him the card I bought. Didn't say, today marks 11 years since I stood in a dress you couldn't afford, saying vows you never meant. Instead, I excused myself mid-meal, went upstairs, took off my blouse, and hung it back in the garment bag marked, for interviews only. I looked at myself in the mirror. No lipstick, no eyeliner, no red wine smile. Just me, eyes sharp, back straight. He had forgotten the day we became legal, and I had remembered who I was before the paperwork. That was the last night I made him dinner, and the last time I wrote us on the grocery list. I left on a Sunday, not because it meant anything, just because the house was quiet. Maisie was at a sleepover. Viola was asleep, wrapped in the same cardigan she hadn't taken off in 4 days. Graham was in the garage tinkering with tools he never used. I packed 2 suitcases, 3 changes of clothes for each of us, 1 folder of documents, 1 notebook. I didn't rush, didn't tiptoe. I cleaned the sink, wiped the counters, made the bed. On the nightstand, I left nothing but my wedding ring placed in a Ziploc bag with the label, Years. Thank you for the silence. In the fridge, I left the Greek yogurt he liked. On the stove, uncooked rice, unsoaked, untouched. The manila folder went into the middle drawer of his desk marked "In Household Financials Archive." Inside photocopies of receipts I was denied, a printout of the job listing I applied to, a one-page summary of what $500 month truly covered. No note, no message, just numbers, dates, facts. On the hallway mirror, I wrote one thing in dry erase marker. You knew I was leaving, you just didn't believe it. Then I walked out. Not with rage, not with closure, just with the key to my old Toyota and a daughter who deserved more than apologies said too late. As I drove past the grocery store, I saw the reflection of myself in the glass door. Hair tied, eyes calm, no more waiting. When I turned onto the freeway, I didn't look back. He didn't call, not that day. Not the next. But 5 days later, an email popped into the inbox I used for job applications. Subject: Internal Applicant Evaluation, Delia Halden. Status: moved to final review. I closed my laptop, folded a shirt for Maisie, boiled pasta for dinner. That night we ate together on a small table in a small rental with no dishwasher but peace. The kind of peace that doesn't announce itself, it just stays. I was assigned the West Region intake file on a Tuesday. Routine: 12 applicants, 3 flagged for priority review. All names typed in clean Arial font, sorted alphabetically. I scanned the list slowly, highlighting keywords: safety compliance, technical deferrals, project lead history. Then I got to column B. Graham E. Carrow. At first I paused, not because it hurt, but because I expected to feel more. Instead, I felt nothing, like reading a name on a box you dropped off years ago. His application had all the hallmarks of someone trying too hard to sound competent again. 5-year gap in promotions. 1 project terminated mid-phase. A 2-line letter of recommendation from a supervisor who retired last year. He attached a personal statement. I clicked it. After a challenging period of restructuring, I'm committed to reintegrating with a team and contributing my field knowledge to public safety. There it was, reintegrating, like he was the victim of a system that forgot him. Not a man who once said, "I do everything, you just exist." I read it twice. Still no reaction. The final box on my evaluation form read, "Recommendation, approve, defer, reject." I didn't fill it in, not yet. I printed the application, slid it into a yellow sleeve, and placed it in the pile marked Internal Review, Phase 2. I'd have 4 hours to finalize comments. That night, I walked to the mailbox with Maisie. She skipped ahead, telling me about a poem she wrote in class, something about bridges and stars and crossing rivers alone. I smiled, not at the poem, but at the irony. When we got home, she went to brush her teeth. I sat at the table, pulled out Graham's file again, and looked at his old signature. Still the same slant, the same G with too much flourish, too proud for his own good. I opened a fresh evaluation form, not to reject, not yet, but to remember what it felt like to be the one holding the pen. By morning, my decision was clear. Not emotional, not reactive, just necessary. I opened the Graham Carrow file again, scrolled through the project notes. The oversight review on his last rail design was damning. 1 measurement miscalculated. 4 engineers pulled in to fix it. $210,000 over budget. No formal reprimand, but a clear, "Do not reassign to lead without retraining" in bright red type. He hadn't disclosed that in his application. Deliberate omission. Section 3, Question 14. Have you been involved in any project audit or corrective action in the last 3 years? He checked, no. I clicked open the evaluation portal, typed. Applicant demonstrated poor judgment during prior role. Failed to disclose relevant internal reviews. Currently unsuitable for reintegration without mandatory retraining period. Then I selected Reject. The checkbox clicked into place with a finality that echoed louder than any argument we had ever had. I uploaded the notes, signed off, closed the portal. Then I sat back, let my hands rest on the table. No shaking, no triumph. Just completion. At 5:42 p.m., I got a calendar alert. A West Division final decisions to be sent to candidates, 9:00 a.m. tomorrow. Somewhere in that stack of emails, Graham would receive the result. From a name he wouldn't recognize. A system he thought he understood. An office he never imagined I'd sit inside. The irony wasn't delicious, it was clean, sharp, like cutting a thread that had frayed long before it snapped. That night I made lemon pasta for Maisie and me. We watched the snow fall in silence. She asked if we could put lights in the window. I nodded. Tomorrow, I said. The next morning I brewed coffee at 6:00 a.m., sat by the window, watched the sun rise. At 9:04 I opened my inbox. No emails from Graham. Of course not, he didn't know. But I did. I didn't need to see his face. Didn't need to hear his voice when he realized there was no job coming. All I needed to know was this. He had applied, and I had answered. On record, on time, with clarity. And he would never even know whose hand held the pen. I woke up at 6:02 a.m., no banging cabinets, no Viola yelling for coffee, no receipts shoved under my door, no voice asking what I did all day. Just Maisie's soft breathing and the sound of snow sliding off the roof. I made toast, real butter, not margarine. Sliced apples for Maisie in a way she liked, thin, curved with cinnamon. The way Graham said was too fussy for a weekday. I placed the plate in front of her. She blinked surprised. You're not rushing today, she asked. No meetings, I lied. She nodded but looked at me longer than usual. Kids know, they always do. After she left for school, I stood by the window and looked out over a street that didn't know me, didn't owe me, and that felt freeing. There was a job waiting, an office, a login password that wasn't his name, but no one needed me to perform, to explain, to justify how I earned my space. That was the first morning I didn't start with apology. The office wasn't large, neutral walls, government lighting, a coffee machine that coughed every hour. My desk sat near the corner window. No view, just the back of a maintenance truck lot. There was a chair, black, worn, no nameplate. I didn't request one. The woman from HR asked if I wanted to personalize my station. I said no need, I'm here to work. And I meant it. On my first break, I went to the restroom, washed my hands, caught my reflection in the mirror. Hair tucked, eyes clear, no ring, no shadow. There was no one to impress, no one to fix, no one to support, only files, cases, real people depending on decisions made by someone who had once begged for $40 to buy shoes for her daughter. Now I signed off on budgets larger than our mortgage. Nobody knew my story, nobody asked. And I didn't offer it. Sometimes power isn't in what you say. It's in what you never have to explain again. 3 weeks later, a new hire asked me what my background was. I said warehousing, before I stayed home for a few years. He nodded, didn't probe. Didn't ask what made me come back, didn't ask if I missed home. I liked him instantly. That weekend, Maisie and I went to the used bookstore. She picked out a book about bridges, same one she'd written her poem about. When we got to check out, the cashier said, "She must really love architecture." Maisie smiled. "She loves structure," I said. And I meant it. That night I found the ring again, still in the Ziploc bag where I'd left it. I didn't throw it away. I didn't need to. It was just not mine anymore, just like the title wife, or servant, or support system. I'd worn them long enough. Now I wore nothing, no labels, no apologies. Just a woman, a mother, a decision maker, with a chair, no nameplate. And that was enough. Because the loudest revenge isn't slamming doors. It's walking out so silently they never hear how much they lost.